Divergent. Divergent Hash, won by Veronica Roth. The weight of expectations. The weight of expectations. The morning sun struggled against the thick gray clouds, casting a dim light that barely touched the edges of Beatrice Pryor's world. As she stood before the mirror, the cool surface felt almost alien under her trembling fingers. Her reflection was a ghostly image, stark against the backdrop of her family's stern faces. The scent of rain lingered in the air, a reminder of the world outside, a world divided into factions, each with its own rigid beliefs and roles. Beatrice, her mother's voice was a gentle murmur, yet it carried the weight of centuries-old traditions. Remember, we are selfless. We are abnegation. Her words were a tether holding Beatrice to a life of gray simplicity, to a faction that valued the collective over the individual. But within Beatrice, a rebellion stirred, a yearning for color, for life beyond the self-denial of her faction. It was a whisper of another life, one where she could be more than the sum of society's expectations. At school, the air buzzed with the nervous energy of her peers. They spoke of futures with the certainty of those who belonged. They wore the colors of Amity's warmth, erudite's wisdom, candor's stark honesty, and even the boldness of Dauntless. But Beatrice, cloaked in abnegation's gray, felt adrift in a sea of choices that seemed to stretch out before her, each path marked by the virtues of the faction it led to. She remembered the days when she and Caleb would play among the gardens of Amity, the laughter of the kind-hearted echoing around them, a stark contrast to the silence that filled their home in abnegation. Those memories were a secret she held close, a reminder of a bond that went deeper than the faction lines that now threatened to divide them. As the test administrator's words cut through her thoughts, Beatrice was thrust into the simulation, a world where her choices would determine her fate. The snarling dog before her was a manifestation of her fears, yet as she reached out to calm it, she felt a connection to something primal and true, an instinct that transcended the boundaries of her faction. The word divergent hung in the air, a label that marked her as an anomaly in a society that feared the unpredictable. Divergents were the wild cards, the ones who could not be controlled, and therefore posed a threat to the delicate balance of their world. They were the living proof that the human spirit could not be neatly categorized, that the heart and mind were capable of more than the society allowed. Beatrice's walk home was a journey through her own turmoil. The secret of her divergence was a daring choice. Beatrice, on the brink of a life-altering decision, stood poised at the train platform's edge. The expectations of her abnegation roots weighed on her, yet a deep-seated yearning for more stirred within. As Dauntless members disembarked with audacious ease, a blend of admiration and apprehension filled her. The allure of autonomy and self-discovery beckoned her towards Dauntless, despite the risks and familial separation it entailed. Murmuring a self-encouragement, her resolve solidified. Christina, another initiate, inquired about her intent to jump. Affirming her decision, they joined hands, and as the train decelerated, they leapt together, landing amidst the rush of the wind, hearts surging with thrill. Navigating the dauntless compound, Beatrice absorbed the vibrant energy and staunch independence. An instructor welcomed them, heralding a future of valor and transformation, declaring Dauntless their new kin. Realizing the gravity of her choice, Beatrice felt a newfound bond with Christina. Unbeknownst to her, this choice would lead to revelations, deceptions, and a transformative love. Standing among her new faction, Beatrice embraced her bold decision, prepared for the journey ahead. Initiation trials. Beatrice stood on the brink of a new chapter in her life, having made the momentous decision to transfer from abnegation to Dauntless, leaving her family and the only life she knew behind. The weight of that choice bore down on her as she faced the unknown trials that lay ahead. The Dauntless training room buzzed with anticipation and nervous energy. Triss felt the eyes of her fellow initiates on her, aware that her status as Divergent set her apart. She knew she would have to prove herself, and the first trial was a brutal test of strength and endurance. Triss and Peter circled each other warily. His taunts hung in the air, but she refused to rise to the bait, her gaze unwavering. The fight began, and Triss lunged, her every movement deliberate and controlled. Blow after blow was exchanged, but Triss held her ground, matching Peter's aggression with unwavering focus. The fight ended in a stalemate, leaving Triss bruised, but standing tall. She caught her breath, her eyes scanning the room. She spotted Christina, her friend and ally, and their eyes met briefly, a silent exchange of encouragement. As the second trial loomed, Triss felt her heart quicken. The fear simulation was designed to push them to their limits, and she knew her divergence might make this trial even more challenging. She stepped into the dark room, the door closing with a soft click. Immediately, she was enveloped by darkness, the sound of cause filling her ears. She recognized the simulation, a manifestation of her fear of the crows that had haunted her before. She steeled herself, drawing on her strength and focusing on her breathing. Slowly, the crows faded and the room fell silent once more. She had faced her fear and passed the test. The days that followed were a whirlwind of challenges. Triss pushed herself to the limit, scaling towering walls, facing her fears of heights, and engaging in relentless combat. With each trial, she emerged stronger, more resilient, and more confident in her abilities. One afternoon, Thor pulled her aside during a training session. She had been struggling with a particular maneuver, and he offered her patient guidance. Their eyes met, and she saw a flicker of something in his gaze, a mix of concern and admiration. It was a brief moment, but it left an impression on her. That evening, as the initiates gathered, Thor announced a new challenge, a capture the flag game in the dark. Triss found herself paired with Uriah, his easygoing nature calming her nerves. Together, they ventured into the night, their hearts pounding with anticipation. They navigated the obstacles, their teamwork seamless. They reached the flag, guarded by Peter, and in a swift move, they captured it, their victory hard-won. As they celebrated, Triss felt a sense of camaraderie with her fellow initiates. She turned to see Thor watching her, his eyes warm and proud. She felt a connection forming between them, a bond forged through shared trials and triumphs. It was in these moments that she truly felt she belonged in Dauntless. The days turned into weeks, and Triss continued to navigate the trials with grit and determination. The memories of her previous life faded as she embraced her new identity. She knew that the road ahead would be challenging, but she was ready to face whatever came her way, secure in the knowledge that she had the strength and resilience to overcome any obstacle. Bravery and secrets. Triss could only hear the thumping of her heart as she sat across from Eric. "You think you're brave, don't you?" Eric sneered, leaning forward. "Standing up to me in front of everyone." Triss met his gaze. Bravery isn't about making a show. It's about standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. The initiates around them fell silent. Eric's smirk faded. "And what do you know about what's right?" he challenged. "I know that being a leader isn't about power or fear," Triss replied. "It's about guiding others to be their best selves." Eric's face tightened, but before he could retort, Thor's voice cut through the tension. "Enough," he said, standing beside Triss. "She's right. And if you can't see that, then you're not looking at what Dauntless truly means." In the dim light of the dormitory, Triss confided in Christina. "I found out something about my family," she whispered. "My mother, she was dauntless before she chose abnegation." Christina's eyes widened. "That's why you're so fearless," she murmured. "But why would she leave dauntless for abnegation?" Triss sighed. "I think it was to protect us. To protect me from becoming a target because of what I am." Christina reached out, squeezing Triss's hand. "You're not alone in this. We're your family now, too." Triss faced the zip line challenge, her heart racing as she stared down from the towering building. "You can do this," Four whispered, his hand on her back. With a deep breath, Triss stepped off the ledge, the wind roaring in her ears as she flew across the skyline. She landed with a thud, her fear replaced by a rush of adrenaline. "I did it," she breathed. Four's eyes met hers, pride and something more flickering in their depths. "You did," he agreed. "And you'll do much more than just survive. Together we'll redefine what it means to be dauntless." Triss nodded, feeling the truth of his words resonate within her. As they neared the compound, she knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them head-on, with the same courage that had brought her this far. She was ready to embrace her destiny, not just as Divergent, but as a true leader within Dauntless. The complexity of divergence. Triss had always known that being divergent set her apart, but she was only now beginning to understand the true weight of that difference. The revelation of her unique ability to manipulate simulations had left her with more questions than answers, and she found herself seeking guidance from the one person who seemed to understand. Tori. "It's dangerous, being divergent," Tori said, her eyes filled with a mixture of concern and sympathy as they sat in her tattoo parlor, the familiar buzz of the needle momentarily silenced. "You have to be careful, Triss. People like Eric will stop at nothing to get their hands on someone with your abilities." Triss nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. "I know, it's just... I don't even fully understand what it means yet. Why is being divergent so threatening to them?" Tori sighed, her eyes flicking towards the door as if checking for eavesdroppers. "Because it makes you unpredictable. In a world where factions are meant to bring order, divergents like you and me challenge the very foundation of that system. We can't be controlled, and that makes us a threat." Triss bit her lip, her mind racing. "Then what do I do? How do I hide this from them?" "You have to be careful who you trust," Tori replied, her voice softening. "But more importantly, you need to understand your own strength. Being divergent isn't just a danger. It's also a power. You have the ability to see beyond the illusions they create, and that's something they fear." Triss considered Tori's words, feeling a mix of fear and determination. "So I have to keep this a secret, but I also need to learn how to use this power. Is that what you're saying?" Tori nodded, reaching out to squeeze Triss's hand. "Exactly. And I'm here to help you however I can. We divergents have to stick together, right?" Triss managed a small smile, grateful for Tori's support. But even as she felt a sense of camaraderie with Tori, she couldn't shake the feeling that her life had become even more complicated and dangerous. Being divergent wasn't just a label, it was a secret that could get her killed. As Triss navigated the days that followed, she found herself grappling with the complexities of her newfound knowledge. She noticed the subtle dynamics between her friends, the unspoken tensions, and the shifting alliances. She wondered if there was something more between Christina and Will. She felt a twinge of jealousy but quickly pushed it aside, reminding herself that her feelings for Tobias were far more complex and confusing. "Hey Triss," Christina said, nudging her gently. "You're being awfully quiet today. Everything okay?" Triss hesitated, unsure how much she could reveal. "Yeah, I'm just dealing with some stuff, I guess. It's not easy, all this initiation business." Will raised an eyebrow, his usual playful demeanor turning serious. "If you ever need to talk, you know we're here for you, right?" Triss nodded, grateful for their support. "Thanks," she said softly. "It means a lot to have friends like you." As the days turned into weeks, Triss found herself growing closer to Four as they faced their fears and challenges together. Their bond strengthened, and she began to feel that perhaps she could trust him with her secret. Yet, the weight of her divergence still pressed upon her, and she knew that the threat of discovery was ever present. In a world divided by factions, Triss knew that her unique ability was both a blessing that empowered her and a curse that endangered her. Vulnerabilities and connections. Triss, with her back pressed against the cold, unforgiving surface of the Dauntless training room wall, felt the bruises from the day's grueling combat exercises. Each throb was a reminder of the day's physical toll, yet it was the secret she harbored within that weighed most heavily on her soul. In a world rigidly divided into factions where divergence was a silent rebellion, her existence was an act of defiance. As she stood there, lost in the labyrinth of her thoughts, the sound of footsteps echoed in the distance, gradually drawing closer. "Triss," came a voice, soft yet carrying an undercurrent of strength. It was For, his approach almost imperceptible, his eyes holding a depth of concern seldom revealed. The urge to dismiss her pain with a facade of indifference was strong, but the proximity of For's presence eroded her defenses. "I have to be strong," she confided, her voice a mere whisper betraying her inner turmoil. "Otherwise they'll see through the illusion." For settled beside her, his silence a testament to his understanding. "True strength, Triss, lies not only in physical prowess, but also in embracing your vulnerabilities." Their eyes locked, and in his gaze, Triss recognized a shared struggle, a mutual understanding of the internal wars they each battle. "But if I reveal my fears, won't that make me unworthy of Dauntless?" she questioned, the doubt evident in her tone. For's response was measured, his touch light as he traced the outline of a bruise on her cheek. "The trust is to brave the unknown, to step into the light despite the shadows of doubt." The warmth of his touch resonated within her, not as a reminder of pain, but as a beacon of unexpected solace. "I'm not sure I can ever be completely fearless," she finished, her voice steadying as she found resolve in For's unwavering gaze. "But maybe that's not what being dauntless is about." For nodded, his hand falling away from her face to rest beside her own. "Exactly, Triss. It's about facing those fears, not eradicating them. That's what makes us human, and that's what makes us strong." As they sat in silence, the chaos of the training room seemed to fade into the background. Triss felt the seeds of trust taking root, and with it the courage to face the uncertain future. Together, they rose, their bond a silent pact to confront whatever lay ahead, not as solitary warriors, but as allies forged in the fires of their trial. With a newfound determination, Triss prepared to step into the next chapter of her journey, one where she would navigate the treacherous landscape of her fears alongside For. It was a path fraught with danger, but also with the promise of discovery, of the world around her and of the strength within. Confronting oppression. "You're quite the enigma, For," Janine mused, her gaze fixed on Tobias. "How did you manage to hide your divergence all this time?" Tobias's voice was steady. "Maybe I'm just good at controlling my fears." "Or maybe you never really understood divergence, Janine," Triss interjected, her tone defiant. Janine's lips curled into a cold smile. "And you, Triss, so willing to confront me. Do you think you have what it takes to dismantle our plans?" "We're not your pawns, Janine. We won't let you control us," Triss replied, meeting her stare unflinchingly. The standoff was interrupted by a sudden commotion outside. A diversion, orchestrated by their allies, had begun. It was the signal Triss and Tobias had been waiting for. With a nod to each other, they seized the moment. Tobias took down the nearest guard with a swift, precise move, grabbing his weapon. Triss followed suit, her training kicking in as they fought their way out, moving with a synchronicity honed by countless hours of practice. They had been brought to Janine under the pretense of negotiation, but it was a trap. The chaos outside was their only chance. They sprinted through the corridors, the sound of their allies' distraction growing louder. Reaching the train station, they leapt onto a departing train, the symbol of their journey towards freedom. As the city receded, Triss leaned against Tobias, her emotions a whirlwind of relief and sorrow. The train's rhythmic clatter seemed to echo the tumultuous beat of her heart. As they rode towards Amity, the landscape outside blurred into a tapestry of greens and browns, a stark contrast to the sterile gray of the city they left behind. The train finally pulled into the Amity station, bathed in the golden hues of the setting sun. The air was fresh, filled with a scent of earth and growing things, a balm to Triss's frayed nerves. She stepped off the train, her boots crunching on the gravel, and took a deep breath, trying to absorb the peace that Amity promised. Tobias's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining naturally. "What now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, betraying the uncertainty that gnawed at her. Tobias's smile was gentle, a silent reassurance in the midst of chaos. "We rebuild," he said, his voice firm. "We find a way to take down the erudite and restore peace to our city." Triss nodded, the last rays of the sun warming her face, igniting a spark of determination within her. She knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but with Tobias by her side, she felt a surge of invincibility. Hand in hand, they stepped forward, their shadows stretching behind them as they walked. A poignant escape. Triss and Tobias sat in silence as the train rushed through the night, carrying them away from the wreckage of their past lives. The dorm car was dark and cramped, filled with the soft rhythmic breathing of sleeping, dauntless initiates. "Triss," Tobias whispered, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. "Are you okay?" Triss nodded, though she wasn't sure if she was being honest. She felt like she had reached her breaking point back in the city, when she had seen her father's body lying lifeless on the ground. The grief and fear had overwhelmed her, threatening to shatter the fragile facade she had maintained. "I'm here if you need to talk," Tobias continued, his hand reaching out to squeeze hers. "We made it out. We're safe now." Triss managed a small smile, grateful for his unwavering support. "I know. It's just everything that's happened. It's a lot to process." Tobias nodded, his eyes reflecting the turmoil of his own experiences. "It hasn't been easy for any of us, but we're in this together." As the train came to a halt, Triss and Tobias exchanged a glance, their unspoken bond stronger than ever. They had faced their fears, confronted their oppressors, and made sacrifices that would forever change them. Now, as they stepped into the open, they held on to the hope that they could leave their past identities behind and build a new life together, free from the constraints of faction divisions. They stepped off the train, their hands still clasped together, and were greeted by the warm smiles of the Amity members. It was a welcome change from the suspicious glares and hostile environment they had grown accustomed to. As they walked through the fields, Triss couldn't help but marvel at the peacefulness that surrounded them. It was a place where they could finally rest, heal, and plan their next move. But even in this serene setting, the weight of their past lingered. "We can't stay here forever, Tobias," Triss said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We have to face what we've left behind." "I know," he replied, his voice steady. "But for now, let's just take this moment to be grateful for our escape and for each other." They found a quiet spot under a large tree, its branches swaying gently in the breeze. Sitting down, they leaned against the trunk, allowing themselves a moment of respite.